Hello everyone, welcome to week 7 of geometry. We're so close, only one more after this. Last week we talked all about tangent, which was opposite over adjacent. This week we are going to talk about sine and cosine, two more functions that deal with triangles. So the first one we're going to look at is sine. And sine is always abbreviated as sin, S-I-N. And so sine is opposite over hypotenuse. All right, so sine is opposite over hypotenuse. And then cosine, which is abbreviated cos, C-O-S, and that is adjacent over hypotenuse. And last week we learned what opposite and adjacent meant. Opposite means across from, and adjacent means next to. But the one word that you are familiar with, but that we're going to re-bring back, is the word hypotenuse. And so hypotenuse is across from the right angle. All right, so this week we're going to talk about sine and cosine, opposite over hypotenuse, adjacent over hypotenuse, where hypotenuse is across from the right angle. Now, for example 1, it says find sine A and cosine A. And then it says write them as both fractions and as decimals. All right, so we are going to first start with sine of A, because that's first. All right, so sine of A. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. All right, sine of A is opposite over hypotenuse. So in this, we're going to go to angle A, because that's what we're talking about, and we are going to label all the sides based off of angle A. So let's start with opposite. Opposite is across from, so we start with A. We're going to go across the triangle. We get to 5, so this is going to be our opposite. Our hypotenuse is always across from the right angle. So we find our right angle, we go across. So 13 is going to be our hypotenuse. All right, so we're just going to take these numbers and we're going to plug them on in. So we still don't know what the angle measure for A is, so we're going to leave that. So we have sine of A equals our opposite. Opposite is 5 over our hypotenuse, which we said was 13. So sine of A equals 5 over 13. And if you type in 5 divided by 13 in your calculator, so we just rewrite sine A and just do 5 divided by 13, you get 0.3846. And that is the answer for sine A. You just find the opposite and hypotenuse, put them in the fraction, and then you just divide the two numbers to get your decimal answer. So that's sine of A. Now we're going to do cosine of A. All right, so cosine of A. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. All right, so adjacent means next to, and we're still talking about angle A. So we go to the triangle, we find angle A, adjacent is next to, so you go right next to angle A, you get 12. And so 12 is our adjacent side. So we're just going to take our adjacent and hypotenuse and plug it in. So we have cosine of A equals adjacent, we labeled as 12. And the hypotenuse we labeled earlier as 13. So cosine of A is 12 over 13. And now we just have to divide the fraction to get the decimal. So cosine of A equals 0.9231. So again, for cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. So you label your triangle, plug your numbers in, and then divide to get your decimal. So you are going to have 3 of these to do, numbers 1, 2, and 3. All right, you have to find both sine A and cosine of A, just like we just did. But before you get started, I want to make note that this right here is also 20 square root 2 because both of those have 1 dash. So that means they're the same length. So go ahead, do 1, 2, and 3, hit pause, and then you can double check and see if you did them correctly. All right, so we're looking at 1, 2, and 3. So let's zoom in and we'll do 1 first. All right, so we're looking at A, so we have to label our sides. Opposite is across from, adjacent is next to, and the hypotenuse is always across from the right angle. So sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So opposite is root 11. The hypotenuse is 6. Do square root 11 divided by 6, you get 0.5528. Now we're going to do cosine of A. Cosine is adjacent, or next to, 5, over the hypotenuse, which is 6. So 5 over 6, divide those, you get 0.8333. Look at number 2. Sine of A. So we're looking at A again. We label our sides. Opposite is across from, adjacent means next to, and hypotenuse is always across from the right angle. So sine, opposite over adjacent. Wow, sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So opposite would be 24. Our hypotenuse is 74. 24 divided by 74 is 0.3243. Now we have cosine, which is adjacent over hypotenuse. So we're going to do 70 over 74. Divide both those, you get 0.9459. And so that's the answer for number 2. Last one, number 3. All right, we're looking at A again, so we got to label our sides. Opposites across from, adjacent is next to, hypotenuse is always across from the right angle. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse, so opposite is 20 root 2. Hypotenuse is 40. So when you do 20 root 2 divided by 40, you get 0.7071. Now cosine of A is adjacent over hypotenuse, so adjacent was also 20 root 2, and our hypotenuse is still 40. So in this case, cosine of A and sine of A are exactly the same because the two sides are the same. All right, so that's it for example 1. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, and the hypotenuse is always across from the right angle. You can go ahead and do the problems for example 1 or go on to example 2. And if you heard snoring, I apologize. That is my dog laying next to me. But have a great day.